I always thought I understood what heartbreak looked like. The kind you can point to and say, there, that's where everything cracked. But nothing prepared me for the sight waiting at the end of my driveway that afternoon. 3 days earlier, I'd left for a quiet fishing trip near Riverbend Lake, hoping to give my bones a break from the noise of home. When I returned, the first thing I noticed wasn't the house. It was the pile. A mountain of belongings, my belongings, dumped beside the curb like a stranger's discarded furniture. Boxes ripped open, clothes soaked from last night's rain, frames shattered, papers drifting like confetti after a parade nobody celebrated. For a good 10 seconds, I just sat there in my parked truck, hands glued to the steering wheel. My heart beat so hard it felt like it wanted out. That can't be mine, I whispered, even though I already knew the truth. When I finally climbed out, the May breeze carried the smell of damp fabric and mud-splattered cardboard. My boots crunched the gravel as I approached my life spread out like a yard sale nobody asked for. The first thing I picked up was a photograph. My wedding picture. Martha's bright smile split clean in half by a long crack across the glass. Dirt smudged her cheek. My breath hitched, and I closed my eyes, holding the frame to my chest as if I could shield her from further damage. Someone made a mistake, I muttered. They must have mixed up the houses. But the evidence argued otherwise. My anniversary watch, Martha's last gift to me, lay face down in a shallow puddle, its leather strap ruined, its hands frozen. Nearby, my fishing rod, the one that had lasted 20 years, was snapped clean in two. This wasn't a mistake. Someone had packed my past, my memories, and my dignity into boxes and thrown them out. My name was still scribbled across one of the boxes in Martha's handwriting. The ink smeared into an unrecognizable blur. It felt symbolic, like everything I'd been was dissolving right there in the street. My pulse hammered. Breathe, Otis. Just breathe. I straightened my back and turned toward the front door. Time for answers. I shoved my key into the lock. It stopped halfway. I tried again. Harder. Nothing. The lock didn't even twitch. My heart sank. No. No, no. I pulled the key out, stared at it, tried again. The lock had been replaced. While I was gone, someone had changed the locks on my house. I fumbled for my phone and called my son, hoping he'd explain this mess. Straight to voicemail. I called my daughter-in-law. Voicemail again. The walls of the house stared back at me with the blankness of a stranger. I refused to crumble. Not yet. I walked next door to Simon's house. My neighbor for 8 years. If anyone knew what happened, he would. He cracked the door open just wide enough to peer out. Simon, I said, trying to steady my voice. Do you know what happened here? All my stuff is on the street. The locks are changed. What's going on? He shifted, avoiding my eyes. Didn't see anything, Otis. Must have been some mix-up. Mix-up? I gestured helplessly at the pile behind me. Does that look like a mix-up to you? He swallowed, glancing past me toward the house. Sorry. I've been busy today. We both knew that was a lie. The door closed before I could say another word. I walked back to my pile of belongings with a heaviness in my chest I couldn't explain. I sat down on a bent lawn chair, staring at the pieces of my life scattered like debris after a storm. The afternoon faded into evening, streetlights flickering on one by one while I waited for my family to return. Hours later, headlights swept across the driveway. Their car. Finally, I stood up, the ache in my joints nothing compared to the ache inside my chest. My son stepped out of the passenger side. His wife walked around from the driver's seat, her jaw tight, her eyes cold. Thank goodness you're here, I said, walking toward them. What happened? Why is everything I own outside? Why can't I get into the house? Pamela didn't hesitate. Because you're done here, she said. We don't need you anymore. Her words hit harder than any punch. I blinked. What does that mean? She lifted her chin. It means you take your stuff and you leave. We're done taking care of you. My world tilted. My own son stared at the ground. My throat tightened. Floyd? Please tell me this is some sort of misunderstanding. He didn't even look up. Sorry, Dad, he mumbled. Sorry. For throwing me out of the home I'd paid for. The home I kept standing. The home they wouldn't even have without me. Something inside me cracked. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Quietly. Like the soft snap of old wood under too much weight. But the break was real. And something colder slipped into the empty space where warmth used to be. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a plan. The silence that followed Pamela's words felt heavier than the entire pile of my belongings combined. Her glare was sharp, unblinking, almost triumphant, as if throwing me out was some long-awaited victory for her. My son, Floyd, stood beside her like a man who'd misplaced his spine. He kept his hands shoved deep in his pockets, shoulders hunched, eyes fixed on the gravel. I swallowed hard. "Pamela," I said quietly, "this is my home. I helped you two get it. I've been living here for 15 years. What do you mean I'm done here?" She snorted. "Exactly what it sounds like. You're not needed anymore. You've served your purpose." "Purpose?" My voice cracked. "I'm not a piece of equipment." She tossed a grocery bag into her arms. "Well, that's debatable." Her cruelty left me stunned. I'd never met someone who could slice a person open with words the way she could. I turned to Floyd. "My boy. My son. The one I raised after losing his mother. The one I worked overtime for. The one I'd taught to ride a bike, to drive, to shave." "Floyd, look at me." He hesitated before lifting his head. His eyes flicked up for less than a second before darting away again. He looked like a man caught between guilt and fear, and guilt was losing badly. "Son," I whispered, "tell me what's going on." He took a breath, but his voice was weak. "It's just, things haven't been working. Pamela and I need space. You have a whole house." My voice trembled. "You needed me out of it." Pamela cut in sharply. "We needed our lives back. You're old, Otis. You slow everything down. You take up space. You eat our food, sit in our living room, watch TV too loud." "Pamela," Floyd murmured softly, a weak attempt to calm her. She rolled her eyes. "I'm just saying what you're too scared to." I stared at the two of them, barely recognizing the people I thought I knew. "You changed the locks while I was gone," I said. "You packed up everything I own. You dumped it in the street. You couldn't even wait for me to be here." "It was easier this way," Pamela shrugged. "Easier for who?" She didn't bother to answer. The street was quiet, but the silence was loud with judgment. Lights in surrounding homes flicked on. Curtains twitched. Silhouettes passed by windows. They were watching, listening, but pretending not to. I felt my throat tighten. "I paid every mortgage payment for years," I reminded them. "I kept this family afloat. I kept this house standing." Exactly," Pamela snapped. "You did your part. Now we're free. That's how life works." "No," I whispered. "That's how users work." Her eyes flashed. "Watch your mouth." I took a shaky breath. "Where am I supposed to go?" She shrugged. "Not our problem. You're a grown man. Figure it out." The wind picked up, brushing against my face like a cold reminder that the warmth I once called home had been pulled away for good. Pamela walked toward the door. "And don't try breaking in. We'll call the police." She disappeared inside with a slam. Floyd lingered at the doorway, his hand hovering near the frame like he wanted to say something meaningful, something redeeming. But he didn't. He just whispered, "Sorry, Dad," before stepping inside. The porch light flicked off, leaving me under a lonely street lamp. I stood there for a long moment, unsure whether to scream, cry, or simply collapse. The night air bit into my skin, and the weight of betrayal settled in my bones. The people I trusted most had just erased me without hesitation or remorse. But beneath the heartbreak, something else stirred, something steel-hard and cold. It wasn't anger, not yet. It was clarity. They didn't want me? Fine. But they'd made two massive miscalculations. One, they underestimated what a desperate man could do. Two, they had no idea that the house they claimed as theirs wasn't legally theirs at all. I didn't know everything yet, but deep down, a feeling clawed at me. Something about this story wasn't finished. something they didn't expect me to find out. I looked at the dark windows. They thought tonight was the end of my chapter. They had no idea it was only the beginning. I sat in that bent lawn chair for nearly an hour after the porch light went out, staring at a house that no longer recognized me. Every breath felt heavier than the last. My belongings were scattered around my feet, pieces of a life that suddenly felt small and breakable. The street around me had gone silent, as though the whole neighborhood was holding its breath. Not one door opened. Not one person stepped outside. Not one concern was voiced. They could all see something had happened. They just didn't want to be part of it. Eventually, the night chill forced me into motion. My fingers had stiffened, and pain crawled up my legs. I needed a plan. I needed somewhere to go. But before I did anything, I needed to pick up the pieces of my life, literally and figuratively. I bent down and gathered Martha's jewelry box. The velvet lining had been torn, and the corner was chipped, but it was something of hers, something they hadn't completely destroyed. I placed it gently in the truck. Next came my tools. Most people would have dumped them, but tools have a way of surviving even when people don't. The metal carried a familiar weight as I tucked them into my toolbox. These weren't just things. I'd built half my life with them. Fixed things. Repaired things. Saved things. Funny how I couldn't save my own family. Box by box, I worked through the mess with mechanical focus. I set aside what mattered, what could be salvaged, and what needed to be left behind. Some boxes weren't worth touching, like the one filled with broken frames and moldy books. Some losses hurt, but I couldn't hold on to everything. Not anymore. When I found my stack of documents, tax papers, insurance files, loan receipts, I felt something tighten inside my chest. Floyd and Pamela had tossed these out as carelessly as they tossed me. It was foolish, careless, and it was about to cost them more than they could imagine. But at that moment, I didn't realize the importance of what I held. I just tucked the folder under my arm and kept sorting. The hours dragged on until the sky shifted from black to a pale gray blue. Dawn crept over the rooftops, and the world slowly woke up around me. Someone started a car 2 houses down. Another neighbor let out a dog. Sprinklers clicked on. It all looked so normal, almost painfully normal. But my world had been turned upside down. I found an old lawn chair leg sticking out of the pile and couldn't help a bitter laugh. "Look at us," I muttered. "Just a bunch of scraps waiting to be swept away." When the last box was loaded, I sank into the driver's seat. My body ached, and exhaustion clouded my mind. But beneath the fatigue, something sharper was starting to form. Resolve. If they wanted me gone, then fine, I'd go. But not the way they expected. Not broken. Not defeated. Not begging. I would leave behind the man they thought they could throw away. I started the truck, the engine coughing before catching. The familiar rumble grounded me. It felt like the only thing left that still obeyed me. As I pulled away, I saw a curtain in Simon's window twitch again. The old man was watching, sipping his tea, pretending not to see the wreckage that had played out the night before. I gave him a slow nod. He didn't return it. Of course he didn't. I drove to the cheapest motel I could find on the edge of town. Budget stay with peeling paint and a neon sign that flickered like it was on its last breath. Perfect. Forgotten places were good for forgotten people. The clerk barely looked up. "How long you staying?" "Just one night," I said, even though I had no idea where I'd be the next day. Room 114 was small and smelled faintly of bleach, but it was quiet. And for the first time in hours, I was behind a door that locked from the inside. I set Martha's jewelry box on the bedside table, next to the cracked wedding photo. Her smile, split by the broken glass, stared back at me like a reminder that I'd survived worse storms. "Wish you were here," I whispered to her. "You'd know what to do." I lay back on the creaky mattress, listening to the hum of the heater. My body screamed for rest. My mind refused to give it. All I could think about was Floyd's face, the way he couldn't meet my eye, the way he flinched when I said his name, the way he let his wife speak for him. Pathetic. Then I thought of Pamela. Her voice sharp, confident, venomous. The kind of voice that didn't just speak, but cut. They wanted me gone. But they didn't know something I would soon discover myself. Everything they had depended on me. Everything they claimed as theirs wasn't theirs at all. And the lock they changed? That was the first domino. Morning sunlight crept through the thin motel curtains, landing directly on my face. I blinked awake, disoriented, my neck stiff from the lumpy pillow. For a moment, I forgot where I was. Then the memories of last night slammed back into my chest with full force. Thrown out, locked out, erased. I sat up slowly. The motel room smelled of old carpet and stale air, but it was the safest place I'd woken up in for a long time, because nobody here wanted anything from me. My eyes drifted to the edge of the bedside table where I had placed the manila folder I'd rescued from the street. Somewhere inside were the documents Floyd and Pamela had thrown out like wrappers. At the time, I'd grabbed them out of habit. Years of factory work had trained me to never toss paperwork blindly. Now, curiosity nudged at me. I pulled the folder into my lap. Bills, receipts, tax forms. Then a thicker set of papers slid loose. The mortgage agreement. My name stared back at me in ink so familiar. I'd forgotten what it looked like. Otis Richard Riley Borrower. Owner. My breath froze. I flipped to the next section. No co-signers. No second names. Not Floyd. Not Pamela. Nobody but me. I blinked, thinking maybe I'd misread something. But each page told the same story. I was the only owner. I was the one who qualified for the loan. I was the one listed on every legal line that mattered. Every signature belonged to me. A tremor ran through my hand. All these years, I had believed Floyd and Pamela were the rightful homeowners, and I was just helping with payments. They had crafted that story so carefully that even I'd accepted it. But this was reality, printed in black and white. The house was mine. Legally mine. Only mine. A laugh escaped me. Sharp, humorless, disbelieving. A mix of shock, anger, and something dangerously close to satisfaction. Of course, I whispered bitterly. Of course this is how it turns out. All those years, all those payments, all the sacrifices, I hadn't been helping them buy a home. I had been paying for my own home while they used it, disrespected it, and eventually threw me out of it. I set the papers down and leaned back, staring at the ceiling as realization washed over me. They weren't just selfish. They weren't just ungrateful. They weren't just cruel. They were stupid, because they thought I had no power. They thought tossing me into the street was the end of the story. They thought I was old, helpless, and easy to erase. But they never checked the paperwork. They never understood whose name was on the deed. They never realized that every mortgage payment I made was building my future. Not theirs. I rubbed my temples, feeling a strange combination of anger and clarity. If I wanted to take my house back, I had every right. Nobody could stop me, not even Floyd's silent cowardice or Pamela's venomous arrogance. But this wasn't about just taking it back. This was about teaching them what real consequences looked like. And I needed an expert. I grabbed my phone and searched for a property lawyer open on Saturdays. A few calls later, I found a firm downtown that accepted emergency consultations. The receptionist's voice was chipper, too chipper, but I didn't care. 30 minutes? I repeated. Yes, I can be there. I gathered the documents carefully, tucking them under my arm as if they were gold bars. Because in a way, they were worth more. The drive downtown was quiet. The radio hummed in the background, but my mind was elsewhere. On every sacrifice, every knife hidden in kindness, every moment I'd allowed myself to believe I was a burden. I wasn't the burden. I was the backbone. When I stepped into the lawyer's office, the scent of polished wood and fresh coffee washed over me. A calm, organized place. Exactly what my life lacked. Mr. Chan, a sharply dressed man with intelligent eyes, gestured for me to sit. "Tell me everything," he said. So I did. I explained the fishing trip, the boxes on the curb, the changed locks, the cold eyes, the betrayal. When I finished, his face was unreadable. "May I see the documents?" I handed him the folder. The moment he saw the deed, his eyebrows lifted. "Mr. Riley," he said slowly, "I'm not sure you realize this, But you are the sole legal owner of the property. I nodded. I suspected. I needed confirmation. He tapped the papers. Your son and daughter-in-law have zero ownership rights. At best, they are tenants. At worst, they're unauthorized occupants. You have complete authority over that house. The words settled deep into my bones like heat on a frozen night. Complete authority. What are my options? I asked. Mr. Chun smiled slightly. Honestly, whatever you want. Legally, the house is yours to sell, rent, reclaim, or lock down. They have no legal defense. My heart thudded slowly. For the first time since yesterday, I felt something like strength return to my spine. Not petty revenge. Not rage. Just justice. They put me out like trash, I murmured. Maybe it's time they know what it feels like to lose something they thought was guaranteed. Mr. Chin nodded. I can help you with that. I exhaled, long and slow. They think I'm helpless, I said. They're about to find out exactly how wrong they are. Walking out of the lawyer's office felt like stepping into a different world. One where I wasn't powerless, abandoned, or forgotten. I had come in as a man thrown to the curb like refuse, but I walked out as something entirely different. A man with leverage. The deed and mortgage copies sat inside my folder like silent weapons. I held them tightly, my fingers pressing into the edges. I'd barely slept. I'd lost everything I owned that wasn't in my truck, but none of that mattered anymore, because I had just learned the truth. The home they kicked me out of didn't belong to them. It never did. It belonged to me, and now, I wasn't going to fight to get back in. I was going to sell it. Let them pack their own boxes this time. The next stop was Walsh Realty, a small agency tucked between a bakery and a hardware shop. Its windows were lined with pictures of smiling families standing in front of houses that looked too perfect to be real. A bell chimed as I stepped inside. The place smelled faintly of printer ink and fresh coffee. A woman behind the desk looked up with a professional smile that never wavered. Good afternoon, she said brightly. How can we assist you? I need an agent, I replied. Today. Right now. Her smile didn't falter. If anything, it sharpened. We can do that. Let me introduce you to our broker, Sandra Walsh. Moments later, a woman in her late 30s emerged. Confident stride, clipboard tucked under her arm, eyes sharp and assessing. She extended her hand. Mr. Riley. Otis Riley. Her handshake was firm. What can I do for you, Mr. Riley? I placed the folder on her desk. When she opened it and began scanning the documents, her gaze grew focused. You're the sole owner? She confirmed. Yes. And you want to sell? Yes, I said. Immediately. She nodded once, decisively. We can have the house photographed tomorrow morning and listed by Tuesday. Are you comfortable with weekend showings if needed? Absolutely. And the current occupants? She asked, looking up with a raised eyebrow. I resisted the urge to smirk. They don't own the place. They aren't tenants. They're just living there. Sandra's tone didn't change, but there was a spark in her eyes. Unauthorized occupants. Understood. She turned the deed toward her, tapping it thoughtfully. It's a seller's market. Your property could be under contract within days, maybe sooner. Do you have a target price? I thought for a moment. Market value. Nothing more, nothing less. Her pen scratched across the paperwork. We'll get it done. It was startling how easy it was. How clean. How legal. Sandra slid the listing agreement toward me. My hand didn't shake when I signed it. Felt freeing, like unclipping a weight from my shoulders. When everything was finalized, she said, I'll take care of everything. You won't need to step foot on the property again unless you want to. That last line hit harder than she realized. I didn't want to step foot there again. Not after what they'd done. A strange calm settled over me as I stepped back outside. The sun had warmed the air, but all I felt was the cool, steady certainty of what I'd set in motion. By tomorrow, strangers would be walking through their kitchen, opening their cabinets, judging their furniture, evaluating their space. Except it wasn't theirs. It was mine, and soon it would belong to someone else entirely. I knew I needed somewhere solid to regroup, so I found a small apartment complex a few miles outside town. Short-term rentals, furnished units, quiet surroundings. Exactly what I needed while the house sold. The manager barely blinked when I paid the deposit in cash. "Move in today if you want," she said. So I did. I brought in only the essentials. Clothes, paperwork, Martha's jewelry box, and left the rest locked in the truck. The apartment felt empty, temporary, but safe. Safe mattered more than comfort right now. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the copy of the deed one more time. My name stared back at me, bold and undeniable. They thought they had erased me. But the truth was simple. You can't erase someone who owns the ground you're standing on. When evening rolled around, I checked my phone. Dozens of missed calls from Floyd. Several angry texts from Pamela. A few from neighbors. One from an unknown number, probably a lawyer they'd found. I silenced all of them. They had made their choices. Now they could live with the consequences. As I settled into the apartment, a quiet satisfaction crept through me. Not vindictive, not petty, but righteous. Tomorrow, professional photographers would walk into the house Floyd and Pamela believed belonged to them. By next week, potential buyers would inspect every corner and every flaw. And soon after, those two would realize they were no longer living in their home. They were trespassing in mine. By Monday morning, my nerves had settled into something cold and steady. Overnight, Sandra had texted me the schedule for the photography session. 9 a.m. sharp. Professional team. No delays. Perfect. I imagined Floyd and Pamela shuffling around the house that morning, thinking their lives were normal again. Making breakfast. Complaining about chores. Living inside for walls they had claimed as theirs. They had no idea strangers were minutes away from stepping through their front door. I sipped the motel coffee. Burnt, bitter, but somehow fitting, and waited. At exactly 9:13 a.m., my phone buzzed with a message from Sandra. Photos complete. House looks excellent. Should go live tomorrow morning. And then, barely a minute later, a second message. Also, your son confronted the photographer team. They informed him they work for you. Expect him to contact you. I smiled, not a warm smile, a knowing one. My phone didn't take long to explode. The first call was Floyd. Then another. Then 40. He alternated between calling and hanging up, as though trying to decide whether he was angry, confused, or terrified. Pamela, on the other hand, wasted zero time choosing. Her calls came rapid and furious. The voicemails she left ranged from high-pitched outrage to shaky panic. I listened to none of them. Not yet. Instead, I stepped out onto my new apartment's small balcony and let the morning sun warm my face. I hadn't felt sunlight like this in years, not with so much freedom behind it. Inside the apartment, Martha's cracked wedding photo sat on the table. I touched the frame softly. "They're learning," I whispered to her picture. "They're learning exactly what you always wanted them to, respect." The phone buzzed again. Floyd this time. Then another voicemail dropped. Then another. Then a text. My phone screen filled in seconds. "Floyd, Dad, please pick up." "Floyd, we didn't know about any listing. Why is the photographer here?" "Pamela. What is happening, Otis? Answer your phone." "Pamela. You can't do this without talking to us. Pamela. This is illegal." "Illegal? No, Pamela. Illegal was throwing me out of my own property." I silenced the entire thread. At noon, my phone rang again. An unfamiliar Boise number. I let it go to voicemail. Then curiosity tugged at me and I pressed play. It was the voice of an older man, measured, professional. "Mr. Riley, this is attorney William Pierce. I've been retained by your son to discuss the matter of the property you are attempting to sell. They believe there has been a misunderstanding. Contact me when possible." A misunderstanding. The audacity almost made me laugh. There was no misunderstanding. Just karma. And good paperwork. By afternoon, Sandra sent another update. "Photos look amazing. The house will be one of the top listings in your area. Are you prepared for immediate showings once it goes live?" I typed back, Proceed with everything. Then, a moment later, I added, do not contact the current occupants for permission. They have none. Sandra responded with a short but telling reply. Understood. Around 3 p.m., Floyd finally changed strategies. Instead of shouting or texting, he sent a message I never expected. Dad, please, don't do this. We're sorry. We really are. Talk to me. I froze. Not because the apology moved me, it didn't, but because it revealed fear. Real fear. Floyd had realized something. He wasn't losing a house. He was losing the safety net he had assumed would always be there. The man he'd thrown out was the only person keeping his world spinning. Removing me meant removing the support system he'd relied on for 8 years. Too late. Sorry only mattered when it came before the punishment, not after. I turned my phone face down and sat on the couch. This wasn't revenge anymore. It was reclaiming something that was mine. Something I'd sacrificed for, worked for, paid for. It was justice. The apartment felt strangely peaceful. No silent judgments. No footsteps stomping overhead. No faint sound of Pamela muttering about my old habits or mess. Just me. And the knowledge that tomorrow morning the listing would go live. Floyd and Pamela would wake up to a for sale sign in their yard. The neighborhood group chats would light up. Cars would slow in front of the house. Agents would book appointments. Families would walk through the rooms, imagining where their children would sleep. And somewhere inside that house, the same people who threw me out would realize they weren't the center of this home. They were the obstacles. And obstacles get removed. As evening settled in, I said it out loud for the first time. They kicked me out. Now I'm kicking them out. Felt right. Not cruel. Not vengeful. Just right. The next morning began with a calm I hadn't felt in years. I brewed a fresh cup of coffee in the tiny apartment kitchenette and sat by the window, watching sunlight creep across the parking lot. Somewhere across town, Floyd and Pamela were still sleeping, or arguing, or pretending everything was normal. They had no idea that within minutes, the ground beneath their feet was about to shift forever. At 8:02 a.m., my phone buzzed with a message from Sandra. It's live. That was it. 2 words. 2 simple words that changed everything. My house was now officially listed for sale. At 8:07 a.m., Sandra sent another text. Sign installed. Heads are turning already. I exhaled slowly, feeling a satisfaction so deep it almost surprised me. Cross town. I wasn't there, but I could picture it perfectly. Floyd stumbling outside in his pajama pants, stretching, rubbing his eyes, then freezing. Pamela coming out behind him, maybe holding her morning tea, maybe already annoyed about something trivial, then dropping the cup as her eyes locked onto the sign in the yard. For sale? Walsh Realty Contact. Sandra Walsh. Right in front of the house they thought they controlled. The house they'd thrown me out of. The house they believed belonged to them. Neighbors slowing their cars. Joggers stopping mid-stride. Curtains pulling open. I could imagine the shock rippling through the neighborhood like a silent explosion. By 8:25 a.m., my phone rang for the first time. Floyd. I let it ring. Then it rang again. He called 6 times before Pamela tried. Call 1. Decline call 2. Decline call 3. Decline. By call 5, she switched to voicemail, her voice frantic. Otis, what are you doing? Why is there a sign in our yard? This isn't funny. Call us back. Our yard. The entitlement dripped from her words like venom. I didn't listen to the rest. At 9:10 a.m., Floyd switched tactics, sending a long text message. Dad, please talk to us. The realtor is saying SHE works for you. Are you selling the house? Why? We're confused. Call me. Confused? Oh, they were finally confused? Good. They had thrown me out without a single explanation. Now they could experience that same silence slicing through them. Sandra updated me again at 10:42 a.m. 3 showing requests already. 1 family wants to come this afternoon. I couldn't help smiling. The house was a magnet, and every person walking through it was another nail in the coffin of Floyd and Pamela's comfort. I replied, approve every showing. A few minutes later, I took a deep breath and listened to one of Pamela's newer voicemails, only out of curiosity. Her voice cracked as she spoke. Otis, I don't understand what's happening. We just need to talk. Please, you can't just sell the house without telling us. We live here. I paused the message halfway through. She still didn't get it. It wasn't their house. It never was. They were squatters in the home I paid for. And now they were finally feeling the ground shake beneath them. By early afternoon, texts from Floyd shifted again. From confusion to bargaining. Dad, we can pay rent. We can fix this. Just slow down. Don't sell. Please don't do something you'll regret. Regret? I wasn't the one who had thrown my father into the street. I wasn't the one who had changed the locks. I wasn't the one who had sneered, "You're not needed anymore." That regret belonged to them. Not me. Never me. At 1:55 p.m., another update from Sandra. First family toured the house. Very impressed. They might make an offer tonight. Perfect. I pictured Floyd pacing the living room like a rat trapped in a cage, checking his phone, watching unfamiliar people wander through the house he took for granted. Pamela, probably peeking through the blinds, whispering sharp accusations, blaming him for everything. And I sat on the balcony of my apartment, sipping cold water, feeling peaceful, vindicated, whole again. Around 4 p.m., Floyd sent one more message, this one longer, trembling with fear. Dad, I'm begging you, we don't have anywhere else to go. If you sell the house, what happens to us? Please, I know we messed up. You're still my father. Just talk to me. My chest tightened for a moment. Not because his words moved me, but because I could tell he finally understood what losing me meant. For the first time in 8 years, he needed me more than I needed him. And that was the moment I knew this wasn't revenge. This was justice settling its bill. His situation spirals into desperation. That evening, I sat at the small round table in my apartment, eating a simple dinner, eggs, toast, nothing fancy. After years of cooking for a family that barely appreciated it, the quiet simplicity felt strangely comforting. At exactly 7:14 p.m., my phone buzzed. I expected another frantic call, another panicked voicemail, another bargaining attempt. But it wasn't from Floyd or Pamela. It was from Sandra. Offer received. Full asking price. My fork paused midair. Full asking price. On the first day, before Floyd and Pamela even fully absorbed what was happening, someone else wanted the house and was willing to pay for it immediately. I typed back, calm and steady. Good. I'll review paperwork in the morning. I set my phone down and resumed my dinner, but I didn't get even 2 more bites in before. Bang, bang, bang. Someone was pounding on my apartment door. Not knocking, pounding. I froze for a moment. Then I heard the voices. Floyd and Pamela. They'd found me. Of course they had. My apartment complex wasn't exactly a secret if someone was desperate enough to check public records or call around. I took a slow breath and stood. Their voices outside were already heated. Dad, Dad, open up. Floyd shouted, his voice cracking. Otis. Pamela shrieked behind him. You can't hide in there forever. Hide? I wasn't hiding. I was healing. I unlocked the door, but only cracked it open. A chain latch stopped it from opening more than a few inches. The moment they saw my face, emotions collided on theirs. Floyd looked shaken, pale, eyes tired, shoulders slumped. Pamela looked furious. Hair messy, mascara smudged, voice trembling with a mix of fear and fury. Dad, Floyd said, swallowing hard. Please, can we come in and talk? No, I said simply. Pamela scoffed. You're being ridiculous. We need to sit down and discuss this like adults. I met her glare without flinching. Adults don't throw people into the street. Her jaw clenched. She had no argument for that. Otis? She tried again, voice sharp. This is a misunderstanding. Nothing was misunderstood, I said. You made your choices. Floyd stepped forward, desperate. Dad, please. Why are you doing this? Why are you selling the house? We lived there for 8 years. And whose name was on the deed? I asked calmly. Floyd froze. Pamela's mouth opened, but nothing came out. They knew. They finally knew. That house was never yours to control. I continued. You kicked out the owner. Now the owner is making decisions. Pamela's voice pitched high. But we didn't know. You should have told us. I didn't need to tell you something you should have respected from the beginning. I said. I gave you a home. You threw me out of it. Floyd rubbed his forehead, voice trembling. Dad, we're sorry. Please. We were stressed. We were overwhelmed. We didn't mean. You meant everything you said. I cut in. People don't become cruel by accident. He winced as though the words slapped him. Pamela tried a different angle. Where will we go? We don't have savings for a new place. We don't have time. That, I said firmly, is not my responsibility. For a moment, everything went silent except their unsteady breathing. The hallway light flickered above us. Then Pamela snapped. You selfish old man, she hissed. After everything we did for you. I actually laughed. Not loudly, just enough for her to hear. You did nothing for me, I said. You used my house, my money, my labor, and then decided I was disposable. Her face twisted. We took care of you. No, I said softly. Martha took care of me. You tolerated me until you thought you didn't need me. Floyd's voice cracked. Dad, please don't do this. Don't sell the house. We can fix this. We'll do better. I promise. Promises didn't fix betrayal. Promises didn't undo humiliation. Promises didn't erase the memory of my belongings scattered on the sidewalk. You should have thought about fixing things before you threw me out, I said, closing the door an inch more. Pamela lunged forward. Don't you dare close that door, Otis. I looked at her, calm and unshaken. Good night, I said, and I closed the door with the chain still on. Her fist hit the door once in frustration. Then footsteps shuffled. Floyd muttered something desperate. Pamela cursed under her breath. And then, silence. I stood there for a long moment, staring at the closed door, feeling a strange combination of sadness and strength. I didn't want this outcome, but they had chosen it. They had chosen who they wanted to be, and I had simply chosen to stop suffering for their choices. Morning arrived earlier than I expected. I didn't sleep much, not from stress, but from clarity. The kind of clarity that comes when you finally stop carrying the weight of a family that never appreciated you. At 8:30 a.m., Sandra texted me. Offer ready. Buyer wants to close fast. DocuSign link sent. I opened the link and scrolled through the contract. The numbers were clean. The buyer was pre-approved. The timelines were short. Everything was exactly as I needed it to be. I didn't hesitate. I signed. One click. One signature. That was all it took to finalize the downfall of the very people who had kicked me out like trash. A strangely peaceful feeling washed through me. It felt like sweeping dust off a floor that had been dirty for too long. Then quiet shattered. BZZZZT. 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 My phone lit up like a Christmas tree. Floyd. Pamela. Unknown numbers. Blocked numbers. Even the neighbor Simon. I placed the phone face down and finished my eggs. At 9:12 a.m., the door to my apartment shook violently. Much harder than last night. I already knew who it was. I walked to the door and opened it halfway, not unlocking the chain. Floyd's face was red, his eyes bloodshot, hair disheveled as if he hadn't slept. Pamela stood behind him, her expression pale, hollow, and terrified. No mascara today. No arrogance either. Just fear. Floyd choked on his words. Dad, please? Please tell me the house isn't sold. It's under contract, I said calmly. Pamela gasped like someone had poured ice water down her spine. You signed? She whispered. Yes. She took a shaky step forward. Otis, we begged you to talk to us. I shook my head. No. You begged after you realized you needed me. Floyd ran a hand through his hair, voice cracking. Dad, listen, we talked last night. We made a mistake. We were stressed. Pamela didn't mean everything she said. Pamela whipped toward him. Excuse me. Don't put this on me. Oh, now you're mad at me? After you screamed at his door last night? After you. They broke into an argument right there in the hallway, voices sharp, loud, desperate. I let them talk for a moment. It was the most honest conversation they'd had in years. Finally, I raised a hand. They quieted instantly. Look, Floyd said, swallowing hard. Dad, we can change. Just don't sell the house. We have nowhere to go. That, I said, is your responsibility. Pamela's voice turned into a whisper of panic. We have a mortgage payment due. We have bills. We're not approved for a rental. We can't move in 2 weeks. You should have thought of that before you threw me out, I said. Her chest heaved. Otis, please, we were just overwhelmed. We said things. You didn't just say things, I said quietly. You showed me exactly what you thought of me. Silence. Painful. Sharp. Floyd's shoulders slumped. You're our father. I shook my head. I was useful. That's not the same thing. Pamela wiped her face with the back of her hand. What about your grandson? He lives with us too. What about his room? What about his school? You're ruining everything. No, I said firmly. You ruined everything when you forgot how to treat the person who built your life. They both flinched at that. Then Floyd tried the last trick people use when they have nothing left. Guilt. Dad, he whispered, voice breaking. Do you really want your last years to be like this? I met his eyes, finally, fully. No, I said, which is why I'm not going back to a house where I was disrespected. He looked like he'd been punched. Pamela gripped the doorframe, voice trembling. Where are we supposed to go? I don't know, I said, but you'll figure it out. The same way I had to figure things out when you threw me out. A long silence followed. Then, softly, Floyd asked, So it's really over? It is. I began closing the door. Pamela's voice rose in one last desperate plea. Otis, please, give us another chance. I paused only long enough to say, You already had your chance. And I shut the door. This time, there was no knocking, no screaming, no begging, just quiet footsteps walking away, slowly, as though each step cost them more than they could afford. Inside, I sank into my chair and let out a breath I'd been holding for years. A strange mixture filled my chest, sadness at what they'd become, but peace in knowing I finally chose myself. Then my phone buzzed again. A text from Sandra. Buyer is eager. Wants early closing if possible. Also, occupants will receive official notice today. Official notice. The legal hammer. The final confirmation that they had lost their power, their entitlement, and their home. Everything was unfolding exactly as it needed to. The next morning came quietly. No pounding on my door. No frantic voicemails. No texts overflowing with guilt or manipulation. Just silence. A peaceful, heavy silence that felt like the world finally exhaling with me. I sat with my coffee, watching the sun climb above the apartment roofs. It reminded me of old fishing trips. Days when life felt calmer, simpler, before responsibility and disappointment turned everything complicated. At 9:30 a.m., my phone buzzed. It was Sandra. Notice delivered. 3 words. 3 simple words that marked the official, legal end of the chapter of my life I had carried for too long. I thanked her, set the phone down, and leaned back. Somewhere across town, a knock had echoed through my old front door. Somewhere, Floyd had opened it. Somewhere, Pamela had snatched the envelope with trembling fingers. And somewhere, their world began to crumble. But I didn't think about that right away. Instead, I took my time finishing breakfast. Life suddenly felt my own. When I finally checked my phone again, the storm had arrived. Floyd, 7 messages. Pamela, 14 messages. Voicemails, 4. 1 from their lawyer, 2 from neighbors. I didn't open any of them yet. I wanted to breathe in this moment, the moment when the weight of years of tolerating disrespect finally lifted from my shoulders. Then, curiosity nudged me. I pressed play on Floyd's latest voicemail. Dad! His voice cracked immediately. Dad, please pick up. We got the papers. They're saying we have to leave. Dad, we don't have anywhere to go. You can't do this to us. Not like this. He inhaled sharply, almost choking. Please, please talk to me. I paused the message. Not because I felt guilty, but because I felt sad for him. Not for the consequences, but for the fact that his entire life had been built on the belief that I would always carry him. Now he had to walk on his own. Pamela's voicemail was different. Her voice was tight, panicked, frantic. Otis, I'm begging you. Our son, your grandson, he's scared. We can't tell him what's happening. Please just talk to me. This isn't fair. I closed my eyes. Fair. Fair was not throwing a man's memories into the street. Fair was not changing the locks the moment he left for a trip. Fair was not teaching a child that their grandfather was disposable. What wasn't fair had already been done to me. Everything now was simply balance restoring itself. Around noon, the knocks came again. Soft ones this time. Not fists. Not desperation. Just resignation. I opened the door fully this time. Floyd and Pamela stood there, different people now. The arrogance was gone. The pride drained. The cruelty stripped away. They looked like two people standing in the ruins of their own decisions. Floyd's voice was barely a whisper. Dad, I just need to know. Is there anything we can do? Anything at all? I looked at him, really looked at him. My boy, my son, a man I raised, a man who had turned into someone who forgot where he came from. My heart ached, but not enough to change the truth. No, I said quietly. There isn't. His chin trembled. Are you really going to let us lose the house? You already lost it, I said. The day you pushed me out. Pamela wiped her eyes with a shaking hand. We didn't think you'd do this. We thought you wouldn't survive without us. That hit harder than I expected. Pamela continued, whispering, we never thought you'd fight back. I nodded slowly. That was the mistake. A long, painful silence stretched between us. Then I stepped back. Not to let them in, but to end the conversation. I hope you learn from this, I said softly. I really do. Floyd closed his eyes. Pamela looked at the ground, and I gently closed the door. This time there were no angry outbursts, no pounding fists, no threats, just two broken people walking away, finally seeing the truth. They had built their comfort on the back of a man who no longer wished to carry them. I sat down again. Tired, yes, but lighter than I had felt in decades. Sandra called an hour later. Congratulations, Mr. Riley. Contract approved. Closing in 7 days. Once funds clear, everything is officially yours again. Fresh and clean. Thank you, I said. For what? She asked. For helping me get my life back. That night, I took a walk around my new neighborhood. Kids rode bicycles. An old couple walked their dog. A wind chime played softly from a nearby porch. Simple, quiet, peaceful. Life didn't need to be dramatic. It just needed to be mine. As I walked, I looked up at the sky. Clear, calm, blue, and said softly, Martha, I finally did it. I didn't know if she heard me, but it didn't matter. For the first time in a long, long time, I was free.